Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's the Mind Reprogrammer back again, speaking about different topics that we can begin to use to enable us to move forward. And today I want to share about suicide and death. In 2018, I lost two people. The first person I lost in October around my birthday, and I lost him to an event where he was stabbed to death. And then 2 months later, I lost another friend to suicide. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have the tools or the awareness to be able to deal with something. I found myself in a place where I had to process losing two people concurrently and also continue living my life, going to work, being a father, and just attending to life in general. And for the first time in my life, I was at a crossroad where the idea of who I was not enough to be able to help me move forward. I found myself in a place where I didn't know how to process death. It was such a weird phenomenon. I didn't get what I could do to begin to move forward. I was stuck. And I have to put my hand up. I was genuinely stuck. But the reason why I made this video today is because I wanted to talk about suicide. For a long time growing up, I grew up in a religious household, as you may know from my other videos. And the one thing I was always told growing up is that this life that you're given was given to you by God. Therefore, if you take this life, then you go to hell and you burn forever. Or if you take this life, it's not yours to take. And I found myself in a situation where somebody who I loved so dearly as a brother took his own life. He took his own life because of the pain he was in. He took his own life because of how hard his mind was affecting him. Something traumatic happened to him and he just couldn't process it. And he tried. God knows he tried. You know, we went to so many things together, so many therapies, we did so many things together, but he wasn't able to process it. So he took his own life. So I found myself in a weird situation where I had to begin to think to myself, what happens to people when they take suicide? Or what happens to people when they take their life or they complete their suicide? And this was something that I battled with it for a long time. But the one thing I came to a conclusion of was when someone does take their life, it's because they're in immense pain and suffering. And this idea that they're going to be damned for eternity because of them doing that, that needs to be let go of. We need to remove that idea because it's not healthy for the people grieving and the people going through this process called grief. But carrying on with the story of my journey with suicide, I found myself in a situation where there was 5 stages that I went through. And luckily, when the first death happened and then the second death happened, I had just started my training as a counselor. So I'm literally going to university every week. And whilst I'm in my triad practice, I'm processing this death. And luckily, I was able to find this model by Elizabeth Kubler called the 5 stages of grief. And we're going to speak about these 5 stages. We're going to speak about these 5 stages so that if anybody is listening to this video that's lost somebody or has been in that process of death or grief, I want them to know that there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel because I'm a living witness of it. But the 5 stages that she said that we all go through, and don't take these stages to be completely linear. We can vacillate between up and down and go left and right. But the first stage she spoke about was denial. I remember when his dad called me and said, Akinsoji, I've read the suicide letter from my son and he's put your name on the letter and he's told me that I should call you to let you know that he's no longer here anymore. And I remember that day I was in my bedroom, sitting down. I don't know what I was doing. I was chilling and I get a call from his dad 2 days after Christmas because he took his life on Christmas Day. And his dad called me and said, by the way, I just want to let you know that Phil took his own life. He jumped in the River Thames. Man. I was in denial. Every single cell in my body did not want to believe it. I did not want to accept that he wasn't here. I remember immediately calling him and my heart was racing like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Is he going to pick up the phone? My whole entire being did not want to accept that he was here. It was such a massive change in my life. I spoke to this guy every day concurrently. Whilst he was in the darkest place of his life, I was there with him, being there with him, understanding it, and most importantly, just shining that light of brightness to him. But I was in denial. Oh God, I was in denial. I couldn't accept it. I couldn't process it. I couldn't deal with it. The pain was absolutely it was just unbearable. I had to take myself into therapy. For the first time in my life, I had to go into therapy. Growing up, therapy was this thing that, why the hell am I going to go sit to a stranger and talk to them about my feelings? Can you even imagine the arrogance of me going to go study counseling and not even going to go and experience therapy? But that death, that changed me. That made me have to go into therapy. I would sit down in therapy and I would talk to my counselor about my feelings, talk about this denial I was encountering. I wasn't able to understand it. And the thing is, even when they told me that he had died, it took me 6 months before I was brave enough to even go into counseling. I kept telling myself that I'll be okay. I did my meditation practice, I did my yoga, I did every single thing that a good person does, a person who looks after their mental health does. But guess what? It didn't work. Absolutely nothing worked. I was in the darkest place of my whole entire life. Then I went through the next stage, anger. I went through that stage of, why would he do that for? Why would he take his own life? A life is sacred. A life is to be kept and used and is to be experienced. You know, I spoke about my first friend who I lost, who was stabbed to death. And then I have a friend on the other hand who's taken his life. And I remember towards the end of my friend's life that took his own life, our contact kind of separated a bit because I was in the crux of the first death of my friend being stabbed to death. And I couldn't understand when I used to speak to him about how he doesn't want to be here anymore because I've got somebody that got stabbed. And on the other hand, you'll see you don't want to be here. But when I reflect on it, I understand how much pain he was in. But like I'm saying, I was angry. I was angry that he wasn't around anymore. I was angry that he wasn't here. I was even angry at him for putting that type of pain on all of us. We had to carry that pain. We had to carry that trauma. We had to deal with that. We had to live with that. Like, that was really hard. And then I went through that next stage of what we call bargaining, where you begin to make a deal with God, where you kind of begin to try and articulate this in your head like, oh, what if? What if I do this? What if I do that? So in my case, it was like, what if I continue meditating every day? Will this pain go away? All of a sudden, feelings of guilt began to spontaneously emerge for me. I started feeling guilty. I started feeling like I could have done something more. I started feeling like I could have maybe saved him. And God knows I tried. Man, I tried. I tried so hard. But going back to what I'm saying, I was bargaining. Like, please, let this be finished. Let this be over. At one point, the pain was so immense and it was so crazy that I used to sit down and just think to myself, like, what if? Is life, what's the purpose of all this stuff? What's the purpose of life? What's the purpose of living? What's the purpose of existing? The suffering of pain of existence became so much that even I began to think weird, crazy thoughts. And I'm being honest with you guys because at the end of the day, I'm a human going through this experience and someone here might be listening to this and going through this experience too. And then finally, the next stage is called depression. Now, mate, this is what I have to call the dark night of the soul. I was deep in depression. There was a type of fatigue I had never experienced before. I was so tired. No matter what I would do, no matter how many hours I sleep, no matter how much I rest, I was always feeling tired. Like, God knows, it was so hard. I would wake up in the morning, I would go to work. Work was going amazing. I even got a promotion during this time. Like, everything was going so well outwardly. Everything was looking perfect. I was in the process of looking at buying a house. Everything was making sense. But internally, like I was saying, Nothing was working. I was doing everything within my own being to try fix it. Even in therapy, it was extremely hard. The only metaphor I can use to explain this process of grief was when I first heard about the death and I was trying to process it, I was trying to fix my own wound by myself. But then due to me not having the tools and having the awareness of what it means to potentially deal with grief, I had to go into therapy. And part of the painful thing about therapy is you've got to go into the wound, open it again, remove all of the pain, and begin to re-stitch it back up. So you can imagine coming out of therapy and weeping. I used to cry for the fun of it. Water was always close to my eyes. It eventually got to a point when I just had to accept that maybe this is just the way my life is from now on. Maybe I'm always going to be feeling sad. Maybe I'm always going to be feeling low. Rather than fighting it, I had to go into it. I had to begin to live in it. And the craziest thing about it is whenever I used to go into my imagination and I used to see my heart in my third eye, whatever you want to call it, I always used to see my heart in a thorn of branches. And it was like as if my heart was stuck inside and I couldn't take it out. And my, oh my, I was in this stage for a long time. Like I was really in this stage. But all of a sudden, acceptance began to arise. And that's the last stage of the model. Acceptance began to arise. I woke up one morning and that heavy fatigue, that heavy tiredness, I didn't feel it no more. All of a sudden, I seemed to have some form of spontaneous energy to begin to do more things. I stopped crying that much. It was kind of like the sun just began to slowly begin to shine. The dark cloud that was all over my head that I was walking around with suddenly just began to change. It began to remove. And this is the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I share this with you today so that you can come to the realization that when one experiences this phenomenon called death, it's going to put you into an existential crisis. You're going to have to reevaluate what it means to be a human, what it means to be alive. And even on a deeper level, you're going to have to begin to evaluate what meaning is. Like I had to kind of extract some learning from this. I had to begin to kind of process that actually, maybe this was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. Maybe this was one of the most powerful things that's ever occurred. One second, I'm going to get my phone and I just want to read to you the eulogy that I read on the day of my friend's funeral. And I just want to share it with you. Philip, you was a brother to me. We only knew each other for a year and we met through Kwaku. And we conversated so much that eventually it became a bromance. As Kwaku used to say, we behaved like an old married couple. You honestly cared so deeply about others and you tried your best to work through this painful situation you encountered. God knows you was my greatest teacher so far on this planet. And as I complete my counseling training, I will never forget our conversations about existence, pain and trauma. So many times we argued and we made up. Many times we cried together about the pain you was experiencing. And many times we laughed so much that our jaws hurt. Since you've departed life, it just hasn't been the same for me. I called you every day for a year, and even towards the end, our contact decreased. I know I lost a friend, and I know I couldn't be there for you, but we both knew what I was going through. We had a love for each other that was beyond emotion. It was a state of being. I will never forget our daily conversations and our adventures to workshops, trying different forms of therapy to tackle the pain you encountered. I sincerely hold no hate towards you, and I know you was in pain. And as I say these words, I know you're beside me because how can it not be? Energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed. And I'll finish off with a quote by your favorite author, Mr. David Hawkins. All reactions to life are subjective. There is nothing happening that is awful, exciting, sad, good or bad. it's pointless to hold a position that catastrophe shouldn't happen, or that the innocent didn't deserve it, or isn't it awful that it must be somebody's fault? With a broad view, one can remain unperturbed by either the content or context of life. This requires giving up judgments, expectations, or sensitivities. Thank you, Philip, for the lessons of existence and showing me the depths of the human psyche. I know we will see each other. As we always said, we're simply walking each other home. I love you, bro. Yeah, man. Whew. Yeah, that still hurts. I don't know. Can I say that I'm truly over it? I'm not over it. Will I ever be over it? I don't know. But what I do know is every single day I get up and I continue living. And I've made myself that promise that I am going to live for the both of us. I'm going to put you in my heart. I'm going to put you in a corner and we're going to live together. One thing I know from this experience of suicide that I've encountered is that you have to look deeper into yourself, and it's going to change you for the rest of your life. The best thing you can do when you think about this situation called suicide is explore the possibility of acceptance. Play with it. Inside every single situation that happens in life, I am a genuine firm believer that we can find something from it. We can extract something from it. And with Phil, I extracted that love goes beyond time and space. I extracted that the human suffering and pain is real. And this mind that we have, which is why I call myself the mind reprogrammer, it needs to be reprogrammed. It needs to be reprogrammed so that it can serve you. You need to be the master of it. And like I've said, meditation, meditation, meditation. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much once again, and subscribe to the channel. Have an amazing day.